Okay, so look, I'd like you to introduce yourself and Vantage a little bit more. You have a massive footprint, and I hope you'll be able to touch on that, um, and then move on to talk about how you've expanded. And as you've expanded, you've had to develop a real community-focused strategy.
Yeah. Vantage Data Centers are located in multiple locations across EMEA.
Yeah.
Cardiff was the first, Newport, Cardiff. We've expanded through Ireland, London, Frankfurt, right down to Milan and on to South Africa. In between Zurich, can't forget those guys, and we're currently developing in France as well. As we speak, we started a joint venture business out there to develop a data center in Paris. So we're covering the major conurbations for data centers and the major locations generally across EMEA. That's been the strategy. We don't tend to go to crazy unusual places unless you count Newport in South Wales. But that's that Vantage bought that business a few years ago, 5 years, 6 years ago now, and it's continued to be extremely popular location for our customers. We have multiple data centers over there, down there, very successfully operating. It's sort of the hopping point, if you like, between London and Dublin. So it's a bit of a stop-off place if you fancy a bit of Barry Island. That kind of been the strategy to sit in the major conurbations, the major financial hubs and the major business hubs around Europe, and be there available for any technology that you want to throw at us.
And how then have you had to expand and develop your community focus as part of that?
Yeah, generally the community focus across EMEA is the same, different languages, but generally it's the same. They all want the same thing, right? We want good community relations. We want to use local labor where we possibly can, very important to us. Be involved in the circular economy within that conurbation. So things like local transport links, very important to us, so we can get people to and from sites, so rail, buses, bicycles, however it is, to get people in and out of the data centers. Local employment is so important to every local council. Good paid jobs in a local area that people aren't traveling too far to get to. So it means we have to link up with schools and colleges to promote work inside the data centers, which we actively do in each of these locations. So kind of the strategy is the same, but the language is different, obviously, but the strategy is kind of the same, is to embed in that local community and be part of the community and part of the circular economy in the community, using as much as we can in terms of local businesses in that community.
So that I get, and I'll buy. But the differences in regulations and the difference in social environments still must make it a very tricky thing to translate those community focuses from place to place.
Yes, absolutely. Our local data centers from here in Acton, we deal with a council called OPDC, Old Oak Common District Council, which is a kind of a made-up district council for HS2. HS2 is our good neighbour in Acton, and that's another way of getting people into work in our data centres by using those rail links. They want what's best for that community. They want local jobs. They want us to invest in the community, invest in people, invest in time, invest in schools and colleges. So those are kind of the things that we focus on within the London data centres at the very least.
I want to touch on the major topic in the public's mind, which is, are you taking all the power? Are you taking all the water? But just before we get to that, I just wonder, from your experience, are things changing? Are communities now welcoming you without fuss, or is there still immense concerns that you have to work carefully to assuage? And then we'll talk about.
Yes, we have to tread carefully. We have to meet the planning requirements set down and laid down in the UK it's called an S106, in England anyway, Section 106 document, which will lay down the kinds of things that we are obliged to do. Things like 100% recycled materials, things like using local transport, so we have a good, hard transport policy. Know where people are travelling from, so we can write down where they're coming from, so we understand what the carbon footprint of getting people to come in and work in the data centre are.
You see,
all of those tiny little things make up the whole.
So I think what I'm coming to is that if you're doing this as part of your DNA anyway, and if everybody is doing this as part of their DNA anyway, is it simply really bad communications on our part? So that we're not telling communities that we're not the scary beast coming in. Actually, we're your friend. And is it solely a matter of good communications and engagement?
I think so. Engagement is very important. Engagement with the local community is important. Sitting in those community groups and explaining what we're doing when we're blocking the road with a big crane because we're delivering more equipment, whether it's helping to look after the local park, or using a local community artist to build and install the biggest piece of artwork in Europe on the side of our data center. Whatever is needed, we will have a go at, and we certainly try to be successful at. But yes, the communications to the press maybe not as good as it should be. Maybe that's our problem, that we need to communicate this. Hence, talking here to you to try and get over that we're not the bad beast that people think we are. We're all part of the economy of London. Having a data center in an urban area is a good thing, because it makes it easier to download your Netflix. It makes it your banking, whatever you're needing a data center for, everyday life today, shopping, everything goes through a data center.
So what is Vantage doing technically to address that issue of power and water and physical resources?
Let's talk about water then. Water in our data centers is a closed loop. We don't use flowing water in the data center from the local mains grid. We fill up the chilled water system once and continue to circulate that water within the data center continuously 24/7. So we're pumping that water and we're continuously using it over and over and over again. We obviously measure it, we obviously maintain it, make sure it's kept clean and we're not rusting our pipes out, for example. However, that water is filled once and used and will be used for the next 25 years. So we measure how much water we actually use, and it's no more than 5 domestic houses, because all we're doing is using domestic toilets and kitchens within the data center to look after our people. So we're doing using no more water than domestic houses would, just like an ordinary office block does. So we're not stealing water, we're not using water, we're not, we're basically recycling that water time and time and time again. And then power, we've built our own substation, and we've brought in our own power via that substation from the national grid. So we've imported the electricity from 2 different parts of the grid into our own substation, then on into the data center. So we've invested in that, we've bought that, we've paid for that, and we've invested, and we operate as our own DNO within that local area, which not everybody does, but that allows us to park ourselves before and after the meter, if you like.
Sure.
We can do both.
In the panel discussion we had earlier, there was another solution, and I wonder what your take on it is that microgrids and your own generating plants, be it biomass or whatever, clearly allow you to bypass it.
That's definitely going to be happening more and more within the data center industry. Bio as well. So waste to energy. You go to Slough, go to Segro in Slough, you'll find a very large power station in the middle of Slough, which has a new waste to energy plant bolted onto the side of it, along with 2 extra turbines, etc., etc. So that kind of is happening in the UK already.
I wonder, will we get to a stage where there are so many micro-generating assets within your industry that you are actually able to load balance for the national grid and actually save civil society an awful lot of grief?
Yeah.
When will we get to that stage, and is
Yeah.
that a reality?
I do believe it is a reality. It is something that's in the future of data centers. I would put it at between 0 and 10 years. There's more and more microgrids being proposed and being built, along with battery storage. And I think the more and more adoption of high-powered chipsets, NVIDIA chipsets, for example, GPUs, that kind of thing. So CPU and GPU in the same rack is obviously something that's out there and coming along at us. The more and more power density we get to, the more it will be a necessity for the data center to build its own asset. Now, you'll build that asset like we always do. We hedge our bets in the data center industry. So we'll build a 100 megawatt scheme, microgrid scheme, hardly micro, 100 megawatts, but we'll probably only use 50 or 60 of it. So that's 50 or 60 that we can use to export and balance the grid.
Do we have the infrastructure to do that?
No.
No.
No. However, that needs national regulation to do that. That needs our governments to be available to buy into this strategy and put some of the wires in. Okay. Now we may end up paying for it as a data center industry, and I think that's probably going to happen. However, if we want to compete on an international scale as UK PLC, then there has to be that conversation going on all the time, and I'm not sure that it is.
I live on planet cynicism.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
you and me both.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I just and you say it's going to be reality in the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
I think so. I think we've got to push as a business.
Yeah.
As a data center business, I'm talking globally.
Yeah, as an industry.
Every company that's building data centers here in the UK has got to have a focus and focus groups and talking about it and getting a conversation going and being a little bit controversial. 10 years might sound controversial, but I don't think it is. I think if we want to compete as a UK PLC, we've got to push our governments in the right direction to allow the data center industry to be competitive around Europe, the UK data centers around Europe. But bear in mind that every national government's going to be thinking the same thing, surely.
Surely. And still on the theme of do we have the right infrastructure? No. Waste heat recovery is a very large element of your work. But I'm thinking we don't have the infrastructure for that to power district heating networks.
Well, we're starting this now. In Acton, there's a district heating starting now. Well, my 3 data centers in London will be plugged into that system. I have the heat exchangers, I have the pumps, and I have the controls ready to plug into that. The pipes are going in the ground across the park next to our data center, LHR21, right now. Okay, so in a year and a half's time, we're going to be pumping waste heat into that system.
And how will that come into my house?
Well, the pipes will run. First customer is a local hospital.
Okay.
All right. So you kind of take the low-hanging fruit first, and then new housing estates, tower blocks, things like that can very easily benefit from preheating water. Okay, it's going to be low-grade heat. It's not going to be anything more than 30, 35 degrees C, but it will lift the water temperature sufficiently to make heating water and heating that building a lot more energy efficient, a lot cheaper to do.
Will that hospital in Acton pay for this, or are you doing this as what's the model?
Well, the model, it goes through a third-party organisation. I would have to get my Nobobada and draw the model out for you, but basically we give that energy for nothing. Yeah, we basically get paid nothing for that energy. We pump that in because it's the right thing to do, and it will lower our PUE, so it will lower my costs in the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my benefit is behind the meter, if you like.
Absolutely.
So I will, my 20 megawatt data center will pump 5 megawatts of waste heat into that scheme eventually when we're fully kitted out, fully built out as a data center. So those are the kind of numbers. That waste energy goes around these pipes and gets used in these tower blocks and hospitals, etc., and then eventually people's houses, hopefully. We'll be able to plug into that as it transitions up and down the streets.
And I think something that you just said touches on the most important point, which I wanted to draw out towards the end now, which is that it's got to be a win-win arrangement for you and the local community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, it's simply not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I suspect a large part of your engagement will be to ensure that the public see that it is a positive win-win situation for both.
Yeah.
If it wasn't a win-win situation, would you still be doing these things? How would you?
Yeah, it has to work for us too.
Yeah.
But commercially it has to work for us too.
Yeah.
So if we're reducing our electricity bill, it makes our data center more efficient, then why wouldn't we do that? Because instead of running a data center at an annualized PUE of 1.3, I can run it at 1.25 or 1. Suddenly I've found 5 to 10 points in efficiency. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's massive on the electricity bill. That really works for us. It means that I can use that electricity somewhere else. Let's be cynical about it.
Oh, sure.
But at the end of the day, it lowers my costs, it lowers the cost of my customer. It means ultimately that data center is more efficient. That means that the services that run through that are run more efficiently and lowers the costs for everybody in the end.
And so one final quick fire question. Look ahead to 5 years' time.
Yeah.
How will your community focus be? What will you be doing then that you're not doing now?
I think we'd be doing more of the same.
Okay.
I don't think we'll be doing anything particularly differently.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll be doing it better, and we'll take lessons learned year on year to improve. Hopefully our college engagement, our schools engagement will be stronger. We have to strengthen that. Let's be self-critical here, and you're not going to learn anything unless we look inward and work out what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, and improve those things we're doing wrong and make it work better in the end.
Okay.
Okay.
We've been beaten by the clock.
Damn.
Richard from Vantage Data Centers, thank you very much. A really high-speed whiz through.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Richard.
Thank you.